John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, national columnist, FanRag Sports. His appearance is brought to you by Gino, the winemaker's choice for 50 years. Visit Gino Pinto on the White Horse Pike in Hamilton, online at GinoPinto.com. Gino's, the winemaker's choice for 50 years. Johnny Mac is in the house as we get ready for week number 5 of the NFL. It starts tonight. We've got Eagles and Cardinals. We've got NFL football back, and John is here to break it all down with us. Johnny, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, buddy. Well, let's dive into some stuff here. By the way, if you're into the shackles like many people out there listening are, the Cardinals 0-4 against the spread, and the spread of this one's 6.5 for the Eagles. So a lot of people, John, kind of feeling the Eagles have this game at bay here. And do you get the feeling around the NovaCare Center that there's any overconfidence? What's the mood over there at NovaCare?
No, I don't think there's any overconfidence. I think, if anything, and I mentioned that before the Chargers game, I think Doug was very concerned about a potential letdown. They were able to get through it. I think there's the natural look back to last season when they had the good start, and they know how quickly things can go sideways if you're not really focused on the job ahead. So I don't sense overconfidence, but at some point, I mentioned earlier in the week about NFL Network putting the Eagles at number 3 in their power rankings. At some point that stuff filters into the locker room.
Right.
And you hope the players don't take it seriously, because this league is so close between teams, and a team that is perceived to be on the downswing like the Arizona Cardinals, and a team on the upswing like the Eagles. Still a lot of good football players on the other side.
Yeah, and we talked about it earlier with, throughout the week, you hear that word trap game a lot. And in the NFL, a lot of times it's whenever there's one team that plays another team that's not perceived to be as good as them, that kind of gets labeled as a trap game. The Eagles here coming into the season, I don't know what the expectations were nationally, but locally it was, let's kind of wait and see. Do you think the Arizona expectations have not been met? Did they have more expectations? They are 2-2. It's not like they're abysmal, but their 2 wins have not been very aesthetically pleasing.
No, yeah, I do think they expected more. I think most people nationally certainly expected more. If you think about where that team was from a talent perspective, when they got blown out in the NFC Championship game against Carolina, and then things fell apart last season. You had Bruce Arians with all the health issues. That contributed to it. But obviously, guys underachieved for the most part. And the thought was, similar to Carolina in that same year, was that last season was the anomaly, and they were closer to being a good team than a below-average team. To date, I mean, they're 2-2. They are 500. It seems like half the league is 500, but so certainly they can still recover, but they haven't been very impressive getting to that 2 win.
John, are there some names of the Cardinals that jump out at you that maybe Eagles fans don't know a lot about, but that you think the Eagles know a lot about? That always tends to happen, it seems, with the Cardinals more than maybe any other team the Eagles face. My father, somebody else will call and say, "Who is this guy?" And they tear him up.
Well, I think the biggest guy who would fit into that category is not going to be playing, and that's Marcus Golding, who's out for the season now. And he's a double-digit sack guy, and I think everyone looks at the Cardinals and say, obviously Chandler Jones is an all-pro impact player, but they had 2 really good edge rushers, similar to what the Chargers had last week. Now one of them is gone, so that's going to be very, very helpful. On the other hand, Deion Buchanan's coming back, so that swings in favor of Arizona. You have the Temple kid, Hassan Reddick, obviously a first-round draft choice, who's been playing inside, sort of out of position. And now because of the injury to Golden and the fact that Buchanan's going to come back, he's going to be playing more on the outside. And then you have the receivers. Everybody knows about Larry Fitzgerald, and certainly Eagles fans do, and he's going to the Hall of Fame. And he's still, even though he's not what he once was, he's still a very impactful player. But Jim Schwartz talked about their receiving group earlier this week, and he compared them to a 4x100 team. Everybody outside of Fitzgerald can really, really run.
Got Larry Fitzgerald, Jerron Brown, John Brown. Yeah, lots of names on their receiving core. On the Eagles receiving core, Eagles fans are waiting to see Torrey Smith break out. He had his own evaluation where he says, I'm not there yet. Is this the week that Torrey Smith breaks out?
I doubt it. I mean, I'm in a camp where I don't think Torrey's going to break out. I just don't. I think it's been too long since he's been a starting level receiver in this league. And I think at some point you got to reach the conclusion that he's probably not that anymore. And I think we're slowly getting to that point. But the Eagles aren't willing to give up on it at this point because his presence on the field has helped in other ways because he can run. And he has opened up the underneath routes for Zach Ertz, who's on pace for a career year. So he's been helpful in that way. But I think as far as production, I don't think you're going to see a high level of production out of Torrey Smith this year. And you could probably see that from last year. If you watch the film in San Francisco, everybody blamed it on the fact that the 49ers were terrible. And they were. And they had terrible quarterback play. But Torrey, on his own, was not good when you watched him. It wasn't like he was playing well and the quarterbacks weren't getting him the football. He was not playing well also. So I think that was sort of wishful thinking that was going to change, and I think you've seen that through the first quarter of the season. It's probably not going to change. From Arizona's standpoint, they could go one of two ways. If Patrick Peterson is used to shadow Alshon Jeffrey, that's generally what you do with a cornerback like that. Or, as I wrote on 973ESPN.com today, they could go the Bill Belichick route and say, hey, Patrick Peterson, go shut down Torrey Smith. He's not part of this offense, and then sort of double team and roll coverage toward Alshon Jeffrey's way and go about playing defense that way. I'll just say from Torrey Smith's perspective, he doesn't want to see Patrick Peterson.
Well, and I was going to ask you, Peterson, Tyrann Mathieu, of course, Branch. They've got a pretty good secondary here, this Cardinals team. That's one thing they do possess. If the Eagles are to get a guy going here, which of the receivers do you think has the matchup that's attractive? I mean, is this a game where maybe you find a guy like Aguilar in the slot?
Yeah, I think it is. Actually, I was going to bring up Nelson because this is a game where you are facing, if not the best cornerback in football, certainly amongst the top two or three. He's in the conversation, whether you want to bring up Aqib Talib or Chris Harris or Xavier Rhodes or Richard Sherman. He's in that category. So if Alshon's going to struggle against him, Torrey's not going to get open against him. And so you got to look in other directions. And as good as they are with Mathieu, as you mentioned, at safety, Justin Bethel at the other corner is not nearly as good. So you have to attack him in that way. And that's how I expect the Eagles to do it.
John, for the second straight practice day, the Eagles were without Fletcher Cox. They were without Wendell Smallwood as they continue that preparation for the Cardinals. So how are those guys looking for Sunday? What do you think their chances are of playing and contributing on Sunday are?
Well, I don't like Fletcher's chances at all, and that's what I heard last week. It was probably going to be a 2-week injury, so I think it's more likely you see him coming back on the short week in Carolina. Hopefully he'll be ready for that game. With Wendell, we don't really know what's wrong because Doug didn't mention. Doug has sort of abandoned the Andy Reid approach of announcing injuries at the start of a press conference. So if you don't ask about a particular player, we don't get an update. And nobody knew Wendell was hurt, so nobody asked about it. And all of a sudden, practice starts, and he's not there. And the coach doesn't speak on Thursday, so obviously he'll have to answer a question tomorrow morning about Wendell and where he is. But it's evident, obviously, if he's not able to practice on Friday and he misses 3 straight days of practice, there's no way he's playing against the Cardinals. And that's been the thing with Wendell Smallwood. He cannot stay on the football field.
Yeah, and obviously we touched on a little bit of this tomorrow, but yesterday. But you would assume then that hurts the catching the ball out of the backfield, because it's not something Blunt does very well. We haven't really seen Corey Clement be that part of the offense. You wonder, is that a part of the offense that would be missing on Sunday if Wendell's out? The ability to throw the ball to the backs out of the backfield.
Yeah, you have to wonder if Kenyon Barner's thrown into the deep end of the pool, because he's only been back for just over a week. But he had in the past shown a little bit of ability. Obviously, he never played all that much, but certainly looked as if in practice that he was pretty natural catching the football. So they might go in that direction. That Byron Marshall's still on the practice squad, and we know about his history with at Oregon, where he played receiver and running back, so he's capable of catching the football. They could always activate him on Saturday if they wanted to go in that direction. But yeah, I mean, Wendell's a big part of this offense now because he's in the Darren Sproles' role. So they're going to be missing more than people think if he's not able to play.
They sure are, and that's a trend around the league. John, I think I read 7 teams in the league. The running back has the most catches on the team. I mean, that's something that is a big loss when you're missing a guy that can't catch the ball out of the backfield.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in today's NFL, you see it, and we've seen it every week against the Eagles. I talked about Lane Johnson and all the edge rushers he's faced over the first quarter of the season, and he's a right tackle. Generally, the big pass rushers previously had always been on the weak side that the left tackle had to deal with. But today's NFL, everybody's got these edge rushers who can really get to the quarterback. And that means what has happened to offenses is they get the ball out quick. And part of getting the ball out quick is obviously short throws, and there's a lot of swing routes and to running backs and things of that nature. So that's why you see so many running backs catching the football.
The Eagles' offense against this Cardinals' defense, and of course, we know the Cardinals with that good secondary here, but how are they against the run, John? Is this a week where, last week we know San Diego not good against the run. They had 2 good pass rushers that the Eagles did very well up. I guess Lane Johnson and Jason Peters won the battle against Bosa and Melvin Ingram. But this week, how do they fare up this offensive line against what looks like to be a 3-4 front for Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the Cardinals have sort of taken a step backwards. I think they miss Calais Campbell immensely because he was such a unique player at a 5 technique. He might have been the best in football. Besides J.J. Watt, I should always say. J.J.'s like in a different category. But and you see how Campbell has been so effective in Jacksonville already. That was a huge loss in free agency, and that's a player you almost couldn't deal with because he's so tall, so long, so lanky, could defend the run, rush the passer. Those guys don't grow on trees, and that's a situation where Arizona hasn't recovered from that. And as I said, Buchanan's been out, so that's hurt them. And now they don't have Marcus Golden. So they're not as good as they were once in the front 7, nor they were projected to be at this point. So the Eagles' offensive line has been clicking on all cylinders, and this is going to be a tough matchup for the Cardinals because this will probably be maybe the best offensive line they face all season.
All right, John McMullen, of course, 97.3 ESPN.com. He covers the Eagles locally for us. He covers the league nationally, writes a national column for FanRag Sports, NFL, and obviously with the league kicking back into action tonight, let's get your thoughts on the Patriots and then get ready for this Buccaneers team. Let me ask, do you anticipate that New England's defense will turn it around, or do you think this is going to be a season-long problem for them continuing tonight against Tampa?
I don't know if they're going to turn it around. If you think about the collapse from last season to this season, it's been pretty extraordinary on defense for the Patriots. I think a lot of the issues have been communication-based, constant sort of drop coverages and misunderstanding where guys are supposed to be. That has happened an awful lot, which is usually the strength of the Patriots. Their communication, their ability to play different defenses, to do exotic things. It's blown up in their face early this season. And they've been, if not the worst defense in football, certainly amongst the worst defenses. And when you think about the secondary, it's weird. They have 2 lockdown corners. But it tells you, if you're trying to play all these different defenses, as the Patriots like to do, and you have guys like Gilmore, who signs as a big money free agent, who doesn't understand, is used to a more simplified system, he becomes far less effective. I think that's been what's going on with the Patriots. And I just mentioned about all the great edge rushers in this league, and the Eagles have seen so many of them. Well, the Patriots, the Super Bowl champions, don't have any. So they can't get to the quarterback. And if you can't get to the quarterback and you can't cover, well, you have some issues.
John McMullen with us. Hey, John, I'm interested in your take on how important this week is for Dallas. They didn't look good last week at home. What if they lose again at home this week to Green Bay?
Yeah, and I think they probably will, to be honest. This is the type of season that's going to be for Dallas. I think they're going to be about a 500 team, maybe a win in a positive direction. Maybe they get to 9-7. Maybe they're 7-9. I think that's who the Dallas Cowboys are. I think last year was sort of the anomaly, and teams have kind of figured out that the way to stop the Cowboys is to load the box, and you're not necessarily going to do what Denver did to Ezekiel Elliott, but as long as you keep them, anywhere from 80 to even 110 yards and force Dak Prescott to beat you. And by the way, Dak has played well. It's not Dak Prescott. It's those receivers.
Right.
They can't get open. They can't get separation. And people talk about Des Bryant like he's a superstar. He is not ever since that Jones fracture in his foot, he hasn't been the same guy. He can't get open. There's no separation, and people have started to figure that out.
Interesting there, and obviously you got Dallas at home. That would be back-to-back home losses if they were to lose that game, and if the Eagles were to win, you would be in an interesting spot. Those two teams don't play till later in the year, but you'd be putting yourselves 2 games distancing yourselves from the Dallas Cowboys. Another game of interest, John, around the league. I'm really intrigued by Seattle and the Rams, to see if this will kind of let us know if McVay's offense is for real, right?
Yeah, it should. I mean, from that standpoint, because Seattle's still very good defensively, and they're going to throw some things at Jared Goff that he's probably not going to look too smooth against. But I'll tell you what, I'm more interested in seeing what the heck that Seattle offensive line does to try to deal with Aaron Donald, because that
good point.
Might be the best interior offensive lineman in the NFL, and Aaron Donald just dominated him. And I fear for Russell Wilson this week. He's got to be completely healthy, and he's got to be at his escapable best.
Yeah, and Donald, arguably, maybe not even arguably, the best defensive lineman in the league right now, and that's coming off of holding out, basically, and having no training camp. He's really hitting stride. Another game to get your take on that I find to be interesting is Kansas City and Houston. I guess we'll find out a lot about Watson, too, in a primetime game.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously he's a playmaker. He's got ability to make things out of nothing, and that's something Houston hasn't had at that position, obviously, ever. When you talk about that franchise, probably the best quarterback in their history is Matt Schaub. So arguably, after one 50-point game, Deshaun Watson has already taken that title, that mythical title. But he's a rookie, and he's going to have his ups and downs, and he's going to have some hiccups. And obviously, Bob Sutton and Kansas City have a tremendous defense. So I expect them to be a little bit inconsistent, but obviously Houston is a lot more dangerous as a team with Watson than without him.
All right, one other game that I think is kind of intriguing is that Carolina Lions game. Both very good defenses. Obviously, the comments from Newton could be a problem, deflecting attention from the game this week on that one is Detroit's at home. So it's another 3-1. Both teams have only given up 70 points this year. This one should be fun.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, Detroit is one of those teams where they just find ways to win and late in the fourth quarter. They've been doing it for 2 years now. They did it again. Got the help from the injury to Dalvin Cook last week, but you got to give them credit. They find ways to win. And ultimately, I think they'll probably do it again. But if there's one guarantee, it's going to be a one-score game.
So there's a couple of the key games in the NFL for week number 5. Tomorrow, John McMullen's pick, by the way, he's got it posted right now at 973ESPN.com on the Eagles and the Cardinals. His prediction record, 3-1, 2-2 against the spread. Check it out now on our website, 973ESPN.com, or wait for this segment on tomorrow's show to hear John give you his take on the Eagles and the Cardinals. All right, plenty of NFL news and notes, as always, here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Johnny, we'll talk to you tomorrow, pal.
All right, thanks, guys.